Loving someone who can't love you back properly is one of the most painful ways you can spend your life. And it's especially hard when those people can periodically be loving and wonderful and make everything feel like the days of painful abandonment and rejection are over forever and everything's great. But then if you've been through this, you know that what often follows is the same old pain when they switch out of there for you mode. They turn on you or disappear for periods of time. Either way, you're getting jerked around, and the only person who can change this at this point is you. I'm Anna Runkle, also known as the Crappy Childhood Fairy, and I teach people strategies to heal the trauma patterns that keep them from the kind of loving, stable relationships they want and deserve. I got a letter from a student named Helen the other day, and here's what she says. Dear Anna, your channel appeared on my screen after I had a devastating disagreement with my partner, and it opened my eyes. Literally every single word he said was a topic of your video, and I finally understood where he was coming from. Thank you so much. The thing is, ever since I watched almost all your videos and tried to understand better how he's wired, he doesn't share much about this, and I've not asked him if he ever considered if he suffers from CPTSD. He had an abusive childhood and complains about migraines, nightmares, ruined friendships, memory loss, feeling of disconnection, lack of need to reach out to friends, etc. I believe him that he loves me and strongly feel that when we're together. When we're apart, though, it gets more complicated. Sometimes he disappears without warning for days, and I'm left not knowing what is going on. He doesn't answer the phone. He doesn't reach out to me at all. It's hard to not take it personally. I get sad and frustrated and get the impression that especially after emotionally harmonic, intense phases, he has to withdraw, I'll say. I'm very understanding and patient. I do tapping, meditation, and yoga, but I am about to reach my limits. I have to look out for myself as well and not care about his needs all the time. It's turning into a roller coaster ride with no apparent reason because when we're together, we are very much aligned. Would you mind making a video for partners of PTSD-affected people? I'm sure there are more fans like me in your crowd of followers. There definitely are. This is a really common topic. I'm so sorry you're going through this, Helen. It's really hard. It's good that you're aware of your partner's CPTSD. You've definitely looked at all the angles and taken care of yourself. When you say that he has migraines, nightmares, ruined friendships, memory loss, disconnection, lack of need to reach out, that does sound like he's got classic symptoms and this sort of avoidance thing going on where he disappears for days. Very unfortunate symptom. Very hard for anybody in the world to put up with that. Now you say you might have to leave, and we can talk about that in a minute, but what I want you to be aware of is that at this point, whether you know it or not, you might be developing CPTSD too, if you didn't have it already, from the chronic stress of getting abandoned like this. And it can debilitate you when you go into that state from making choices about this situation. So I'm really glad you wrote, and I'm here to help. Now, this periodic abandonment thing, it is mysterious. And the first thing I'm going to say is that the fact that he does this, leaves, and doesn't tell you what's going on or return your efforts to communicate, is pretty devastating behavior. It'd be one thing if this were, I don't know, a neighbor who pops in for coffee sometimes and then disappears. But this is a romantic relationship where there is understandably an expectation of communication, where you are getting hurt very understandably by the abandonment, and I'm sure you've told him this. So, tough love time. Let's talk about what might be going on with him. Well, actually, we can't talk about what's going on with him because even you don't know. Is it a drug habit? Is it another relationship? Is he just feeling overwhelmed? Is it just CPTSD? It doesn't matter, except the fact that he is not communicating with you. These distinctions would totally matter if everything else in the relationship was going strong, but here's the thing. He can't communicate with you about his plans and intentions. He leaves you hanging and in pain again and again. So even if his activities are innocent in themselves, the behavior of not telling you is emotional abuse. His non-communication is a terrible thing to do to somebody. Now, maybe he does it on purpose. Maybe he's traumatized and can't deal with anyone, including you, for spells. Let's assume innocence here. He's just traumatized. Either way, this is not a partnership, all right? He can't or won't care for you or respect you in the most ordinary way that a partnership requires, all right? So let's focus on you. You've effectively slipped into what is called a trauma bond, a deep attachment that forms when love is switched on, then off, then on, then off again. And it's like a hook that snares you, and everything is wrong with it. But your emotions and your wiring make you hold on like it's so great. And you find glimmers of hope even in the worst emptiness. It does something to your thinking, something bad to your thinking. You're on the receiving end of emotional abuse, but instead of pulling back and leaving, you get into it. There's a quiet little feeling of shame about that, but you push it down. Other people can easily see from the outside that the situation's no good. So you distance yourself from people, right? Instead of changing the behavior or snapping out of it, you distance yourself. Is that happening for you, Helen? Are you finding yourself covering for him and isolating when he's not around? Maybe pretending you do know where he is and that everything's okay so that people can't judge you? Because maybe if you can get people to believe in him, you know, there's like this hope, or maybe other people's belief can help you believe in him when your hope is sinking, right? You say you're at the end of your limit, and that totally makes sense. So it's weird, right? That we go to all that trouble to believe in something we know on some level is only going to bring loss. And why do we do that? It's the emptiness of being alone that we fear, right? We might have been a little lonely, but basically fine before the relationship started. And now we're acting like we have no choice but to put up with emotional abuse. That's what emotional abuse does. And there's that crap fit element where it's like it's painful all the time. And if you're like a lot of us, your thinking distorts and you start thinking, I'll adapt to the pain. The problem is that I get so hurt by it. I'll stop being so hurt by it, and then that will make it work for me. But that's not really realistic, all right? If you feel like you're causing this problem, just remember, that is the CPTSD talking. That feeling that you have to hold on, that's CPTSD talking. That feeling that it's you, if only you could do better, that is CPTSD. It's not your fault that you got hooked into a roller coaster relationship, but it's you and only you who's going to get you free from it. So let's get this out right away now. Yes, there are people who could handle being with somebody who comes and goes. I don't know who they are, but they'll definitely let us know who they are in the comments and say, oh, this is so old-fashioned. But in any case, you're not somebody who can handle this. And I encourage you not to try to become somebody who can. Like, don't do that to yourself. Don't try to strip yourself of sensitivity and connectivity, because that's what's going to be beautiful to somebody else in a relationship one day, that you have that. All right. So go ahead and remain the kind of person who loves fully and needs high quality love right back. Be someone who gets clear and timely information when your partner needs a break. Be someone whose partner never refuses basic information and whose comings and goings are positive and known to you and harmonious with you. The times when he's with you and the times when he's away from you should both feel like you were treated lovingly and with respect. So just remember, a partnership customarily is like that. It's totally reasonable that you need that, and only trauma has convinced you that you can somehow make do without this basic level of love and consideration. All right, the connection you feel with your current guy when you're together, I get it. And in fact, maybe this has been a pattern for you. That's often, what happens. If it wasn't a pattern before, it will try to become a pattern now. So it's really important that because of this trauma bonding that's happening, that you break this pattern, all right? The intensity and the higher love experience, or what feels like higher love, becomes possible because of the abandonment that's happened before and that will happen again. Like, you could kind of think of it as a kind of fetish, almost, a form of domination by one person that can hook a person who's being dominated. And it's not healthy, it's not satisfying. It's like plastic food in a fake fruit bowl, right? It looks like a beautiful apple in there, but if you bite into it, it's just like dusty plastic painted red. And that's kind of like the love and intensity that you feel when this guy comes around. It looks so great. But because you're wired for love, it will never be satisfying for you. It's a plastic apple, all right? A lot of people will say this guy is a narcissist and he's manipulating you, love bombing, discarding. Maybe it fits that pattern. I don't know much about him from your letter, except that he's making your life miserable. So there's no need to diagnose him. I'm going to suggest to you that you not use my videos to try to piece together an explanation for why he does what he does. It's time for you to be selfish here and look inward and direct your patience and kindness inward and ask, how did I become someone who would give all my love and time to an unhappy relationship? And it's not too late at all for you to get out of this. You could tell him now, you could wait till he leaves again, but the trauma bond relationships are a lot like an addiction, so you'll want to line up support to get through the withdrawal after you end it. What does this mean? Well, I cover a lot of this in my dating and relationships course for people with CPTSD. You can get a link to that in the description section below if you want to check it out. But here are a few tips. You're going to want to line up human support. This could include a therapist, family members if you've got some good ones, and female friends, especially the ones who are positive and supportive of you and want the best for you. You could watch videos and pick up some good books on how to survive a breakup. There's one called Don't Call That Man, A Survival Guide to Letting Go. I used that book myself once with excellent results. I'm here to tell the tale. And you'll need to plan some joy and some busy time in your schedule to minimize the grief and loneliness that come with any breakup for people with abandonment issues, even with someone you hate. But in this case, it's someone you love. So this is going to hurt. The sooner you cut all ties, the faster you can start healing and stop hurting. So let us know how it goes, Helen. Please get back to us after you've made your move, or if you decide to stay, let us know how it's going. We want to hear back from you. If anybody else out there, if you've got a question to ask me on Ask the Fairy, send it to me at hello@crappychildhoodfairy.com. Put in the subject line, Ask the Fairy, so that I know it's from me and my team can send it to me. When you're sad inside and feeling empty, romantic obsession can sometimes feel like the brand new direction that you've craved all your life. It's a fresh breeze. It's a reason for living. And for a person with unhealed trauma, the feeling of falling in love with another person can quickly turn into a portal where you abandon yourself. Life becomes all about them, and things begin to fall apart in your own life. Other people can see you're acting in a destructive way, but when the other person doesn't feel that way about you, and your obsession with the person is the thing that's making you feel like life is worth living, you may find yourself making up any reason you possibly can why you should continue to pour your emotions, your love, and your hopes into this relationship that doesn't even exist. This is limerence. It's an infatuation that's not actually a reciprocal, stable relationship. And two signs that it's happening are you're searching for hidden signs that the person who doesn't want you secretly does want you or belong with you. And two, you find yourself giving mystical meaning to ordinary things, all in the service of keeping the fantasy, which is actually destroying you, alive, up in the air, full of energy for you. So it is like being under a spell. How do you break it? Because leaving this fantasy can often feel like your world is crashing around you, and it's painful. So people have a very hard time. Even when they know they need to stop it, it's very hard to do. So I have a letter today from a woman I'll call Lisa. She writes, "Hi, Anna. I was emotionally neglected as a child with an alcoholic father and anxious mother. Most of my adolescent memories are of crying alone and pleading for someone to care. I was also the youngest of my siblings, so I was often left out and took on the role of scapegoat. Lots of rejection, exclusion, etc. I've released this resentment and have understanding and compassion for my family, but I'm still having trouble rewriting the story." I'm not sure what she means by that. I've got my fairy pencil. I'm going to be circling things that I want to come back to. I'm going to read her letter through, then we'll come back and see if we can help Lisa. Okay. "The rejection pattern continued as I've had the recurring cycle of falling, quote, hopelessly in love with people who are unavailable, not ready, not willing, etc. And when I say in love, I mean unhealthily obsessed, romanticizing endlessly for years. Continuous rejection has kept me in a state of feeling not good enough." Okay. My current conundrum is complex. The most recent manifestation of this pattern began about 2 years ago. We met while traveling, and I felt that soul recognition feeling at first eye contact. We also recognized very quickly our shared passion of creating an off-grid community. And we received the message that we were supposed to work together on that mission. Our destinations were aligned, so we decided to drive across the country together. He reminded me oddly of my father. It started slow. We didn't share intimacy until a few weeks in. Then we had sex, and all my emotions, wounds, attachments, fears hit me like a train. And the first few times this happened, he held really good space for me, like almost too good. And I wanted to cling to that feeling of finally having the support I'd been yearning for. It did help me heal some of my father wounds so beautifully. This scared him because he doesn't want me to be dependent on him in any way. His walls went up quickly after that, and he pulled back, which only triggered my anxious attachment to reveal itself even more. We were able to work through it enough to maintain connection, and when we parted ways, we decided we would stay in a long-distance relationship until we reunited in the place that we would start community together. While apart, I was the only one that initiated any contact. When we would talk, it always felt cut short, like he wasn't fully present or interested. He always had something better to be doing. He said he just wasn't great at long distance. When I would express my concerns, it actually would only push him further away. So I, quote, broke up with him a few times because it was too difficult for me to bear. Although breaking up with him didn't actually ease my longing and heartache. It made it worse. Fast forward a year later, and we are reunited, him and I, and a few other friends who were gifted land. This whole experience was so divinely guided. Dreams coming true. I get to live in a beautiful fairy jungle with my soul family. The only problem, I'm still infatuated with him, and he only wants to be friends because, in his words, he's not ready for a relationship. We're living together, sleeping in the same room, basically together 24/7, but with no intimacy, verbal reassurance, validation, or deep connection. I started experiencing CPTSD flashbacks and having intense emotional pain. My expression of that pushes him away energetically, thicker walls. We spiral into our toxic avoidant and anxious dynamic, and he doesn't feel inclined to do the work to meet me in the middle because we're not in a romantic partnership. The rest of the farm family started to see my big emotional outbursts, and I became draining for them. So everybody is setting boundaries. My inner hurt child receives this personally as exclusion and rejection, feeling so similar to being excluded by my siblings growing up. I continue to be triggered, explode, feel guilt and shame, apologize, and plead for understanding. They don't seem to really understand. They just feel exhausted, and so do I. So I decided to take space, and here we are. I've been gone for about a week now. I'm still experiencing anxious attachment, now toward the whole family, and I feel left out. I really want to be able to live there and reach harmony because it feels so much like my home, my tribe, and where I'm supposed to be. I feel that his reflection in my life is very karmic and has brought a lot of healing for both of us. He shows up as best he can and offers the support he feels comfortable providing. It doesn't seem to be enough for me because I always want more, and that's frustrating for him. I know I need to release attachment and expectations of him and move in to acceptance that he does not want a romantic partnership with me. I'm not sure how to not take it personally and stop feeling so sensitive around him. Any words of wisdom would be appreciated. Okay, gosh, Lisa, this sounds so painful, and I'm really glad you wrote. We're going to go through this again, and I'm going to help you hear what you're telling me. But what I hear is that you are working so hard to take what's actually happening and turn it into something magical and meaningful. And I'm assuming this is because it's so painful you can't face it. So this is going to be, I don't want to be hard on you, but it might be hard for you to hear this because I think what's going on is a lot plainer than you've allowed yourself to see. Okay. So this is really common for people with CPTSD. You're not alone. This is how limerence works. I know you know that's what this is. All right. Limerence, for anybody who's new to the word, it's infatuation, obsession with somebody, usually does not characterize an actual relationship that's reciprocated. And one of the key signs is that you're looking for hidden meaning in things, hidden signs that this is actually a big deal relationship, even though the other person doesn't know it yet. Okay, that's what's going on here. That's what I hear. So you start out, you tell us a little bit about your past, and this part has just made me so sad. You were emotionally neglected as a child. I'm so not surprised when I hear how this is playing out for you. Alcoholic dad, anxious mother. All right, so there's the roles. And most of your teenage memories are of crying alone and pleading for someone to care. And it just sounds like that's exactly what's going on right now. So in a way, the situation you've got yourself into right now has you sort of in an adolescent place, a childlike place, where, the problem with being a teenager is you don't get to leave. You kind of have to just endure it. So you were the youngest of the siblings. You often got left out and took on the role of scapegoat. Okay. Left out. That sure came up again, huh? Still having trouble rewriting the story. So I don't know what you mean by that. I think you mean, changing the course of your life. And I will help you do that. But if you mean trying to pretend what's happening isn't happening, like rewriting a story, I'm going to help you not do that. I want you to look at the story, how it's really playing out, because the truth is what you need to heal. All right. So the rejection pattern continued, and you'd had rejection, so much rejection. And you've had a recurring cycle of falling hopelessly in love with people who are unavailable, not ready, not willing. And when you say love, you mean unhealthily obsessed, romanticizing endlessly for years. And you know what? You're right. That is different than love. Obsessing on somebody it's just kind of like a place you go in your mind. It's an escape. It's not really the verb of loving another person. And, if we were going to be strict about it, if you really love someone and they don't want to be with you, then you would let them not be with you. You wouldn't put any more energy into trying to make them into something that they're not. That's what real love is. That's a tall order when you're obsessed with somebody, I know. And you say, continuous rejection has kept me in a state of feeling not good enough. So, yep. There it is. So, but I want to help you become empowered in this story to see how this is actually a situation you're creating. All right. So you say the most recent manifestation began about 2 years ago. You were traveling. You say, we met while traveling, and I felt that soul recognition feeling at first eye contact. So I don't know if you know this, but that soul recognition at first eye contact is a limerent belief, a limerent behavior. I realize you may have a spirituality where you believe that souls suddenly find each other and then it all works out. But I can't tell you the number of letters I get from people who are using that kind of new age belief system or spirituality, which might otherwise be helpful or meaningful to them. They're using it to put themselves in terrible situations. And this is where it begins. I feel a soul recognition, but because of the way you were raised, I'm just going to say, and the way it played out, what you're recognizing there is somebody who's not into you. A feeling that you have had before in relationships with your father, of rejection, of being left out. So there's a recognition there, and it feels like a soul recognition. Now, I know you're going to go on to say that you have this other destiny going on, but if it were your destiny and it were good for you, it wouldn't feel like soul death. Because that's what you're describing you're going through is soul death. Okay. You said, we also recognized very quickly our shared passion of creating an off-grid community, okay, and received the message that we were supposed to work together on that mission. And so, again, received the message that you were supposed to work together. This is the kind of thing that limerent people often seize onto. Now, you did end up creating a community together. So, you got the idea, you both wanted to do it, and you felt like that. I'm just going to put stuff in plain English. I'm just going to take the sort of spiritualization of this off of it. And just say, you met, you decided this was a goal of both of yours, and you decided that you would go for it and you would try to do this. Then you say, it started slow. We didn't share any intimacy until a few weeks in. Okay, just want to say, Lisa, that's not slow, that's fast. 3 weeks is very fast. And in those first 3 weeks, you're going from soul recognition on day one till 3 weeks. And I just want to help you see, like, you're trying to convince yourself that this was very responsible, that you waited 3 weeks, but really you were just like diving off a cliff. You've just attached your whole plan for life to this guy. And something that I teach people to do all the time, and hopefully you've seen it in these videos, and that's why you're writing to me, is that if you have these traumas, you may want to consider waiting for much longer. I would say never less than 3 months. What you want to do is get clarity about the other person's character, their life situation, their feelings about you, their intentions for a relationship. So you found out after sex with him, or you know what, you may have found out before, but you just not mentioning it here. And this is so hard because we've all lived in a culture and grown up in a culture that believes and acts like, oh, it's totally fine. You can just sleep with people and it's just part of your destiny. And then however it turns out, you'll just sort of go your separate ways. Well, I don't know how true that is even for people who weren't traumatized. But I know for people who have these terrible attachment wounds and have been rejected by their parents, it can be absolutely devastating. It can just hijack your whole life, your brain, your life, your heart. And then because you have these abandonment fears, you become hostage to your own need to stay with somebody that you slept with. And so it's very clear from the outside that you didn't have adequate information to know if this guy was really that into you or wanted to be your boyfriend or husband. And that you're using ideas like karma and soul recognition and receiving messages to justify rushing in. And, this is just me here. It's Anna. It's the fairy. I know, I'm not going to fall for that. I don't think it's magic. I think it's sexual attraction. And a person with CPTSD just kind of like putting their whole selves into a relationship without stopping first to get verification that this is what is going to work for them. I'm not hearing that you have any clarity at all about what does work for you and what you need. And so there's just like 100 points here where you're kind of crap fitting. You're fitting yourself to whatever you got and then putting like magical dust all over it to go, but see, it's so meaningful. And I'm just going to sort of take that off. I'm going to take it off and just keep trying to show you what is, not what's magical about things. I do agree life is magical sometimes. But if you're just sitting there feeling this miserable, that wasn't magic. That was PTSD. Okay. You say, then we had sex and all my emotions, wounds, attachments, fears hit me like a train. That's right. You sound like just about everybody with an attachment wound. So that's why I recommend people be so careful with crossing that line into sex, because it will. Your wounds are going to come up and hit you like a train. And if you are in a relationship that's really established, someone's already said, I love you, I'm with you, I want to be with you, I'm going to stick around, and those wounds come up and they can kind of hang in there with you and help you with it, great. So what I heard you say instead is you say the first few times this happened, like your wounds came up around sex a few times. Like, I'm just saying, it's not supposed to be like that. All right. That's your soul screaming and saying, you've thrown me into this situation that is not sustainable and I'm not supported emotionally for being out on this ledge that you've walked me out onto. That's why you're crying. That's what I keep hearing. Like, you're invalidating yourself. You're invalidating your own experience of what's happening. The reason you're having pain isn't because you're not spiritual enough. The reason you're having pain is because you're a real person. You're a real woman who wants to be loved, who doesn't want to be just like used in some casual sex way and then is supposed to go off and pretend like it never happened. Like, who is designed for that? People who do that well, it's usually not because they're healthy. Okay, just saying, and people will argue out there and you can argue, but this video is not for those people. This is for the people who get hurt by casual sex. Okay. So then you say the first few times it happened, he held a really good space for me, like almost too good. Okay. What do you even mean by holding a good space for you? I think what you mean is like, he didn't run away. He kind of helped you like process your feelings. But I just want to point out, like, that's not good, because what he wasn't was the man who loved you and wants to be with you. So holding a space for you is some kind of euphemism for, was a buddy for you and didn't run away at first. Eventually you say his walls went up. He just didn't want to deal with this at all. He didn't want you being dependent on him. He wanted casual sex. And that's, pretty common. People out there, that's what they do. That's fine for them. But that's not what you wanted. That's what you felt like you had to go along with. And I think that you couldn't cope with that. And so you were putting all this like karma belief on it. Here's where you say something. This is like for me, like when I hear this, that's like a red light flashing from right out of your mind. You say, it felt so good. I wanted to cling to feeling like I had the support I'd been yearning for. You wanted to cling to it, but you didn't actually have it. That wasn't the support you were yearning for. It was somebody who just, had sex with you and stayed friendly for a few times, That's not the support you're looking for. You're looking for somebody who's like really with you. Like, believe me, that pain of abandonment is a lot less when what's built into the relationship is that there isn't abandonment, there's commitment. So if you can wait until after some kind of commitment and be clear about the level, don't crap fit. Be very ambitious about how much commitment you want before this is going to feel okay. Because if you ever want to get out of this trap, you got to stop hurting yourself. Because every time you hurt yourself, it's not only that you don't get what you want, but you get set back. You get set back. You get worn down, ground down a little bit. Your whole energy gets kind of damaged by it. So you don't want this to happen. You got to be very careful with your precious self here. And you'd be surprised how much better it can go when you treating yourself with that self-respect is there for somebody to fall in love with. They're a lot more likely to fall in love with somebody who doesn't just like move their boundaries wherever required to make the thing go. All right. It's hard to love and respect somebody like that. And that's a hard thing to face, but that is almost always in play when this kind of dynamic is happening. Okay. So then you say, it helped me heal some of my father wounds so beautifully. And I'm just going to say, I'm not hearing that at all. It sounds like it helped bring up your father wounds and make them hurt you all over again. That's not healing. You never say here that this is what he's telling you. If he told you this and you believed him, I'm just going to tell you he's manipulative and selfish. But you're not telling me he's saying that. Like, I think he's just like, hey, let's have casual sex. No expectations, okay? Like, that would be really common out there. And it's you who's telling yourself, this is actually a healing. I'm getting destroyed, but it's actually a healing. And this is the thing you're telling yourself. All right. I know this is going to be hard to hear, Elisa, but from the outside, it's just like, this doesn't sound healing at all. It sounds damaging. You say, this scared him because he doesn't want me to be dependent on him in any way. He doesn't want you. It's not that it scares him. I don't think scared is the word. That's a little bit like somebody is scared when they want intimacy, but it's hard to go that fast. He doesn't want it. So he's put off. He's repelled by you having all this like emotional thing on him, as if he's your dad, as if he's your husband or boyfriend, and he's not. So that started getting weird for him. His plan for casual sex wasn't working out. So what did he do? His walls went up quickly. He pulled back. And then you say, which only triggered my anxious attachment to reveal itself even more. So now you're kind of like pathologizing natural reactions that you of course have, because for you it was love, for you it was wanting to be with somebody, and you jumped the gun and you just had sex with somebody who didn't feel that way about you. So it's not that you're just having a PTSD reaction, you're just having a natural reaction to the fact that you're just kind of walked into this situation that was totally hurtful to you. You say, we were able to work through it enough to maintain connection, and we parted ways deciding we would stay in a long-distance relationship until we reunited in the place that we would start community together. While apart, I was the only one that initiated any contact. Okay, telltale sign. There's a book called He's Just Not That Into You, and it hurts, but this is when somebody doesn't contact you and you're doing it all, he's just not that into you. And probably if he's like most men, being chased by you contacting him all the time, trying to imbue this with all this meaning, it probably made him pull away even harder. It's uncomfortable, And when you talked, if he would cut it short, like he wasn't fully present or interested, not like he wasn't present or interested. I think he was uncomfortable and like he always had something better to be doing. He said he just wasn't great at long distance. And that sounds like he was trying to spare your feelings. And that's what people do sometimes. Instead of saying, look, I just don't feel this way about you. I'm not into it. They'll just say, look, I'm just not great at this. They'll see if they can sort of kick the can down the road. And then you said, when I would express my concerns, it would only push him further away. Yep. I broke up with him a few times because it was too difficult for me to bear. Although breaking up with him didn't actually ease my longing and heartache, it made it worse. So something in you knew you needed to go, but by then you were sort of hooked. And we all know what that's like. It's such a horrible place to be, and I'm so sorry. So fast forward a year later, and we're reunited. Him and I and a few other friends were given land. And this whole experience was so divinely guided. Dreams coming true. I get to live in a beautiful fairy jungle with my soul family. The only problem, I'm still infatuated with him, and he only wants to be friends because, in his words, he's not ready for a relationship. So I'm not ready for a relationship is almost never what, that's like it's almost like a meme or a cliche. That's what somebody says when they don't want to hurt your feelings, but they don't want a relationship with you. But you already knew that. He just doesn't feel that way about you. And some people, they can have sex quite happily with somebody they don't want to be with. And some of us cannot do that. I'm like that. You're like that. We're not compatible with people like him. Just not compatible. Okay. Seems like it. And that traumatic childhood can make us think like, I should be able to fit myself to this. But the sign that you can't actually fit yourself to this is the way you have to keep putting magic fairy dust on everything to make it seem like it's actually meaningful and actually spiritual and actually destined. And that is the classic sign of limerence, all right? The only problem, I'm still infatuated with him and he only wants to be friends because he's not ready for a relationship. We're living together, sleeping in the same room, basically together 24/7, but with no intimacy, verbal reassurance, validation, or deep connection. And there you are, like everything in your being is like trying to suck that out of him. So I don't call that a soul family. I call that a soul prison. Your soul is in prison. Your soul is dying. You're not getting what you need. And you've already you kind of fixed your attachment is on this thing that's like a stone. It's not giving it to you. So then you say, I started experiencing CPTSD flashbacks, and that's what's going to happen, when we're acting out of that rejected crap fit thing and having intense emotional pain. That's right, because that's very painful what's happening. My expression of that pushed him away energetically, thicker walls, and you spiraled into your toxic, avoidant, and anxious dynamic. So I think you're a little bit magicalizing that. Well, it sounds harsh, but you're not in a relationship with him. So when it's like this avoidant dynamic, he's not avoidant. He just doesn't want to be in a relationship with you. So that I just want to help you just get real about that. The cure for limerence is actually to just come out into the light of day and go, oh, I'm totally feeling this way about somebody who really doesn't want me to do that. It's making him uncomfortable. It's making everybody else uncomfortable. And then you said he doesn't feel inclined to do the work to meet me in the middle because we're not in a romantic partnership. I hear in your language here, and I notice this a lot in people who are limerent, there's this extra effort around the language to soften it and make it sound beautiful and special. He doesn't want to do the work. He just wants you to stop, it sounds like. He just doesn't want to deal with it. So you put that very nicely. He's not inclined to do the work. And but I want you to just look at what it is. He just doesn't want to do it. This is getting weird for him. Okay. The rest of the farm family started to see my big emotional outbursts, and I became draining for them, draining in quotes. So everyone is setting boundaries. Yeah, so I know that feeling when you become that girl. My hurt inner child receives this personally as exclusion and rejection. All right, I'm going to ask you, I know inner child is meaningful to some people, but I'm going to ask you to not punt your feelings off onto an imaginary being called an inner child and just say, I am feeling like this I'm taking this personally. Just say, I am taking this personally. I can't help it. And you know what? I know what it means when we say don't take it personally. It's just how somebody else feels. But you know what? It is personal. It is you who feels this way, and he doesn't feel the same way. And really, in a way, there's nothing more personal. And what's important to face is that doesn't mean that's who you are. That doesn't define who you are, but that defines this painful experience for you that you're stuck in. And it's one you've been in before. So feeling so similar to being excluded by my siblings growing up, I continue to be triggered, explode, feel guilt, shame, apologize, and plead for understanding. I just want to say that part of you that explodes, that's like the one honest expression that comes out of this. I think you've been exploding the whole time, but you're suppressing it with all this language and belief system. It's like, but it's really karma, but he's healing me, but blah, blah, blah. We received a message about this. All of that, that's like That's a layer put on to make it feel like it's okay. But actually, this makes you angry. You're in a terrible situation that's painful, that you gave yourself to this guy and he doesn't want the gift you gave. It feels terrible. It's okay. It's totally survivable. You can get out of this. Many people have done it, practically everybody. I continue to be triggered, explode, feel guilt, shame, apologize, plead for understanding. They don't seem to really understand. They just feel exhausted, and so do I. Yeah, because with that layer of trauma underneath it, when we do this, we're being irrational. We're being irrational. It just doesn't make sense. Like what a person who doesn't have trauma does is they sort of go through a period of sadness and then they adjust. They either leave the farm or they forget about the guy. They just get over it because they're like, oh, blah, 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 that wasn't real. Okay. Some people, I think, can get over having slept with somebody a few times, and have a friendship. But I think it's actually pretty rare. If there's actual romantic feelings there, I tell everybody, don't hang out with exes. If anybody has romantic feelings, it's always a recipe for pain. And if it's going to hurt you, and when he gets together with somebody he wants to be with, it's going to hurt that woman. And so I decided to take space, and here we are. I've been gone for about a week now. I'm still experiencing anxious attachment. I think you're experiencing abandonment, Melange, too. So we can give that to ourselves by stepping out of a situation where we were attached. But it's okay. This feeling will pass. It's feeling toward the whole family, and you feel left out, and you really want to live there and reach harmony because it feels so much like home, your tribe, and where you're supposed to be. And this is sad because this is very jeopardized right now. If I had to put money on it, I would say there's a 10% chance you're going to be able to find harmony there and be at peace with this guy there. It's not a very good chance. I don't think there's a lot of peace for you there. I think it might be worth a try because it's something you always wanted. But I would encourage you to take at least a few months. Take some time to absorb the reality of what has happened, of what really is. Have an honest conversation with the farm and with him about what's really going on, and just say, I'm sorry, I'm romantically obsessed. I need a few months to go cool out. I want to come back. I really want this to work, and I'm going to go get this out of my mind. It might be worth a try for this incredible thing that you wanted. But if there wasn't this incredible thing with land, and it sounds like something you would totally lose if you walked away, I would just say, cut all contact now. No good comes from sticking around in a limerent relationship. It is soul draining and soul killing. And it will block you from ever finding real love, and it will keep that wound agitated all the time. Like you need a certain amount of peace. Sometimes you need to get all effed up about something that happens to be prompted into healing, but then you need a peaceful place to do it. You need to not constantly have the thing agitated. So what's cool, some people who write in, they're dealing with somebody who wants to keep stirring up the flames and keep it going. I'm not hearing that. You're not describing that. He's just trying to go on with his life after a casual relationship. So, yeah. So he does the best he can. He offers support. He feels what he can provide. And it doesn't seem to be good enough for me because I always want more. Yeah, and that's frustrating for him. Yes. I don't know if you've ever been in that position where somebody's always sad and anxious because how you feel about them isn't what they hoped, but it's really hard to be around. And if you've been in that situation, it's not because the person's a bad person. It just happens sometimes. And traumatized people it's really hard for us to right the ship sometimes, to sort of bring ourselves back from that limerent state. Okay. I know I need to release attachment and expectations of him. You say that in a little bit like a Buddhist way, like it's a high act or something, like you would do for anything. But I think what you need is to get over the man. You need to wash him out of your hair. This isn't really a spiritual thing. It's a practical matter, like not be around his things, his face, his voice, his smell, his stuff, to have no hope. You want to like abandon all hope, ye who live here. There can't be any hope. And get into acceptance. But I'm not sure how not to take this personally and stop feeling so sensitive around him. Yeah, it's just got, when limerence gets in, when we don't have something meaningful in our lives, when we don't have love and connection and meaning in what we're doing. And so when you take a sabbatical, if you follow my suggestion, it's time for you to cultivate your life, your meaning, your friendships, the things you love, the beauty, the animals, the friends, the experiences that make you happy, because you fulfilled. It's a lot harder to knock you out of that space into limerence, which is where we totally leave ourselves and it's just like everything is about this other person and whether they gave us a sign or some energy or something. It's a false god. It just can't do it for you. It just can't. So any words of wisdom would be appreciated. That's what I have for you, Lisa. Now, if anybody here feels like they get stuck in limerence, you might want to take my dating course. There's a link to that down below. If you're not sure, there's a quiz in the free tools section on whether you can check whether the common symptoms that childhood trauma has affected your dating life. You can check and see if you have those symptoms. And then, of course, there's coaching for people who want to heal from trauma-driven dating patterns. Loneliness can grind you down so hard that when you finally meet someone, you can be primed to completely shut your eyes to the red flags that are wrapping themselves around your face. And if you weren't loved properly as a child, you may have a superpower for this kind of denial. Because when it's happening, it feels like your whole life depends on keeping the feeling of being loved on tap, even when it's not love, and even when the person you're hooked on shows every sign of bringing grief and trouble into your life. My letter today is from a woman I'll call Tracy, and she writes, "Hello, Anna. I've watched all your videos, and they really help me stay calm during my new boyfriend's dysregulation. We're only 1 month in, and at the start, he was all for me, and extremely positive, happy, passionate, and engaged. Then he read a letter from his impending court case from 3 years of childhood sexual abuse, and he has gone very, very quiet, saying he needs to get the demon off his shoulder and get back to a version of himself he's happy for me to see." All right, I'm circling some things I see here. I'm going to read it all the way through so we can hear what you're saying, Tracy, and then I'm going to go back through and respond to some of the things I circled and see if I can help. Okay, so it's been a fortnight and I'm starting to wonder, what should I do? Do you have any advice? Currently, I'm answering his breadcrumbs of "hello, babe" every few days without a delay to make sure he knows I haven't abandoned him. He has said 4 days ago, "You're not going anywhere, are you? As much as I'd understand if you did. XXX." And I responded by saying, "I was in it for the long haul and take all the time you need." Yesterday, I messaged him saying I was thinking of him and I was hoping he had a good day, but it was left unread. He tried to kill himself 4 times once, just a month before he met me. He also has 5 kids who he has every second week, who he loves dearly. Is that what you suggest I give him, more time? It's such early days, and we obviously don't have the background of discussions about this at all. It just hits so fast. I'm a little desperate and lost, not knowing what to do, but until I hear from you, I'll give him time, patience, kindness, and understanding. Thank you so much. This is all very new to me. All right. Thank you, Tracy. I think I can help you. All right. This sounds like a very dangerous and terrible situation for you. And this is going to be a tough love letter. But Tracy, I think you're gravely in denial about what's going on here and what is needed here. I'll tell you why. All right. You're 1 month into dating someone. That's like nothing, really. That's getting to know them a couple times. It sounds like you have a sexual relationship or you wouldn't be taking it so seriously. But 1 month in is, you really can't make any decision about whether it's a fit or this is a person for you or anything, even if they were wonderful and totally ready for a relationship. So he was all great and he was happy and passionate and engaged. And then he read a letter from his impending court case for 3 years of childhood sexual abuse. So I assume it's a prosecution of the abuser. Abusers need to be prosecuted, but I think it can do a terrible, terrible number on the people who were abused and who have to show up for court and testify about that and open the whole thing and prove the legitimacy of what they're saying. And, there's really not an easy way to do that. So he's gone very quiet and saying he needs to get the demon off his shoulder. So he's saying he has a demon on his shoulder right now, and so that he can get back a version of himself that he's happy for you to see. So he's in some terrible state that he doesn't want you to see. And he's also abandoned the relationship. Just saying, okay, Tracy, he's not with you anymore. and you don't know when, and he's not really talking. Okay. So it's been 2 weeks, and I've started to wonder, what should I do? He's saying breadcrumbs of hello, babe. You respond without a delay to let him know that you haven't abandoned him. So you know what? When you've been dating for a month, you can't really abandon somebody. It's not like that. Abandonment refers to something that happens to a kid. And I'm just going to intuit from your letter here that you have some serious abandonment stuff. And, if he got abused and it's only come to light now, then somebody abandoned him, didn't stand up for him when he was young. So these are people with abandonment issues. And I get that you want to reassure him, but you can't be there for somebody who isn't in your life. All right. If this were a long-standing relationship, if you guys had a committed relationship, if you lived together, were married, had children. But here's what you tell me. He says, oh my goodness, you haven't gone anywhere. I'd understand if you did. And you say you're in it for the long haul. So, Tracy, why are you in it for the long haul? Can you wait at least till you've been seeing somebody a year before you say you're in it for the long haul? That's called a life commitment. So you're not in a place where you can do that. These are the rash proclamations of somebody with a great big attachment wound who has totally attached to somebody and who is maybe attaching even harder because he's abandoned you. And again, I get it, he can't be there for you right now. But then you said he tried to kill himself 4 times once, just a month before he met you. So if you were together 4 weeks and now it's been 2 weeks and a month before he met you, so that's 10 weeks ago? 10 weeks ago, he tried to kill himself 4 times. Okay, this is the tough love. Somebody who's in that fragile a state and who has tried 4 times, he's in big danger, honey. He's big, big danger. Danger for you to be around, danger for him to have a relationship that presents itself as oh, I'm totally here for you. You can't possibly be there for somebody you don't know. And it's not fair to promise that to somebody. Take it from me. I'm somebody who has made a similar decision, and I regret it so much. It's so bad for a person who's suicidal to have a whirlwind relationship. It's so bad and so unstable. And, it can't possibly work out in a way that fixes them. It can't. He may heal one day, but he's going to do that. It's going to be this huge inside job. And I don't know what his relationship to this court case is. I don't know if he initiated it or got dragged into it. But I do know that even though justice may be done towards the perpetrator, it's not going to fix the hurts that happened to him. He's got a world of trouble here. All right. And then as if getting together with a guy who just tried to kill himself 4 times, this is like a savior mission for you. He has 5 kids who come see him regularly. So this is somebody who needs to preserve life so much for those kids. And getting into a whirlwind relationship with somebody with attachment wounds is the last way that he can keep his life stable. It's not stable. It's going to be a big rush of, woo and love, and then, can't work out. And I will say this is, his attachment style here of going way in and then way out. That's a disorganized attachment style. That is common for people who were abused like he was. So it's not his fault that he's like that, but it's not a workable relationship for you. And a person can heal from that stuff, but he is not at that time right now where he's any day now going to come out all right, I've got it now. I can really give a proper commitment to you. That's not what's happening. So basically, I'm just trying to say you're not going to get what you want here. And more importantly, you could possibly hurt and destabilize this person who's on the very edge of survival. And I want you not to do that. And so what I would suggest to you, since you ask, is that you very gently just step back. Just let him drift away from you. He's not calling you. He's leaving you your texts unread. And that's perfect. You can just let it go. Just let it go. And one day he might get in touch and you can very lightly and gently just say, I don't think I can right now. The more time that passes that he's not trying to be in a relationship with you, the easier it's going to be for you to Just kind of hold a boundary away from him with kindness, with praise for him. Just like, yeah, I don't think I can get into a relationship right now with what's going on. I really wish you healing. I hope it goes really well. So, that's as kind as you can be. What's not kind is putting emotional demands on somebody to like be there for you. And you're not. You're sitting there, you're saying, oh, I'll just sacrifice everything I need and just wait for the guy and text him promptly. But I don't want you to do that, Tracy, because I'm interested in you and I want you to be interested in you. He's working out his stuff. He's not relationship material at this time in his life. But if you would like to have a relationship, the shortest route to it is to heal your trauma wounds, the ones that have you deciding to get into a relationship when you hear the terrible, I can't think of any kind of trouble that would be worse in a potential partner than that they were suicidal. It's not a person to get together with. That's a fantasy that you can rescue. And just trust me, you can't. This is something he's going to work out. He's hopefully, because of this court case, going to have access to professional help and deal with it that way without this complication of a fantasy whirlwind romance. Okay? So I suspect that's not what you hope to hear, but you asked, Tracy, and I think a lot of people have had this experience of kind of rushing into a situation. A lot of times people who are suicidal, they don't tell you that at first. And, I ended up in such a relationship and it ended quite badly. And it was devastating to my life. It took me about 2 years before I was emotionally on my feet again after that. And I don't wish that on anyone. When you do get into a relationship, there are specific qualities you should be looking for, and you need to prepare yourself for that relationship. And to prepare yourself for that relationship, you have to be very clear, like, what is a good partner and how will I know? What is the process by which I'll be able to discern if they're that person for me? If a real relationship is what you want, then it's time to get real about what you really want, what the person you're interested in really has to offer, and what in your own self needs to be healed so that you can stop making the same relationship mistakes over and over again. Real relationships involve pain and loss sometimes. You can get rejected. You could be deceived. You could end up settling for less than you really want. You could end up in a bad situation and feel stuck there. Now, these are real stakes, and they can easily come into play when you dodge some of the responsibility and courage required to show up, be vulnerable, and let another person get to know you enough to maybe fall in love with you. Now, none of that can happen when you hide how you feel, remaining separate, apart from the person you're in love with, and pouring all that emotional energy into a fantasy version of how things could be with them. I'm not just talking about imagining a romance with someone who's not in a relationship with you. I'm talking about the kind of one-sided romance where the intensity of your feelings and your vision of the potential of the relationship is just going up like here, and you're so tuned into every sign they give you that they might feel the same way. But your communication and openness about the nature of your feelings is way down here. You're hiding what a big deal they are to you, or hiding the fact that you're interested romantically, or you're pretending to be just friends. Not only do healthy people not find this kind of hiding attractive, but it can absolutely hollow out your actual life. You end up alone. All that energy is going basically into like nothing, into air. That's what a fantasy is. A place in your mind that you keep locked up so you don't have to face what's real. Nothing can be built in a fantasy relationship. Nothing can deepen, and no one is there for you at the end of the day, which is the very thing that made you afraid to face what's real in the first place. Fear that you would end up being rejected, so you end up sacrificing the possibility of being with anyone. If real love is what you want, it's important to own that, to spot fantasy energy when it's happening and shine the light of day on it, to come back to your real self and do good things there to make real love possible. All right, I got a letter the other day from someone I'll call Jim, and he writes, "Hi, Anna. I grew up very emotionally neglected by both parents. I grew up in a two-parent home, middle class, and never lacked for any physical needs. However, my emotional needs as a child were never met or cared for. I have memories that go back to age 3, but I have not a single memory of either my mother or father telling me they loved me or even giving me a hug." This becomes significant. Okay. I was also the oldest of 4 and was often in a situation where I was babysitting or taking care of my 3 younger siblings. My father worked 6 days a week, 10 hours a day, so was absent a lot. I also became the emotional parent with my mother as I took on the role of regulating my mother's emotions rather than her helping me with mine. I hid my emotions and needs, and my primary goal each day was, "Don't stress out, Mom." I was always on guard, hiding my own emotions and managing things so she would not get upset. It is only within the past year that I've realized a lot of this. I've learned how my childhood has affected my adult life in many ways, including my relationships. I'm 41 years old, divorced, single, with 2 kids. There were different issues in my marriage, but I can recognize now how I was not emotionally available throughout. See, I circle because I'm going to come back and read it again, and we'll talk about what you said here, Jim. I had a 4-year relationship after my divorce, but that also ended up not working out. I have a full-time job running a group home for teenagers and a part-time job as staff at a youth center. I also volunteer at 2 other youth group programs. I have 2 kids of my own, ages 11 and 9, and I always have at least one of them with me, so I'm a full-time single dad, not to mention managing my own house. I love my jobs, what I do, and I love my kids and the time I get with them, but my time is pretty filled up, and I don't have much room for a relationship on top of everything else. I get pretty lonely at times being single. I desperately want a relationship and someone to spend my life with. I've been single now for 2.5 years. On to my current issues with limerence. Over the summer, my youth center did our week-long summer camp for teens. I do it every year and love it. Some adult leaders from the other youth group programs were there to help. One of them being a beautiful young woman who I met there on the first day. Throughout the week, we spent a good bit of time around each other during the various activities. We also had some good interactions and conversations, talking and laughing. I felt like we connected in some ways throughout the week. A week like that is a bonding experience anyway among the staff team due to the shared mission of our experience. But I found myself really liking her and putting in effort to be in situations with her. She displays all the qualities I would look for in a woman and was also there involved in something that I find important and love doing. It made sense that I would be attracted to her and would like her. She is younger, 28 years old, never married, no kids, which all immediately made me pause and figure she would never go for someone like me. It's not like I'm out searching for younger women. I just happened to meet her, and she has all these wonderful qualities that I'm attracted to. I also don't meet women much in my regular routine. Running a group home with all-male staff and working with teenagers doesn't lead to many opportunities to meet available women. After the week of camp ended, I could not stop thinking about her. I desperately missed being around her. I connected with her on social media and sent her a message, just a "hey, it was great to have you there, and it was great to meet you" kind of message to get a conversation going. We sent a couple of messages back and forth casually, and then she stopped responding and never even read my final message. I knew I couldn't bombard her with more messages, so I left it at that. I felt crushed that she stopped responding and that she obviously did not want to communicate with me as much as I did her. I wanted to keep a connection going, and it hurt a lot to come to a realization that she did not feel the same. If she had, she would have kept talking. I continued to keep thinking and obsessing about her, crying at times because I did not have the connection with her that I wanted. She just seems like the perfect person for me. I started volunteering at the same youth group location where she volunteers. I got to be around her a bit there, but sometimes would find myself getting nervous, worried about what to say, then leaving and not even talking to her. Those times would lead me to feeling completely crushed that night. However, on a couple occasions, I did talk to her, and we would have a good conversation catching up with each other. Those times would lead to a huge high feeling of hope and happiness. After a couple of months of just hoping to be around her and maybe connect more through conversation, I was scrolling through social media and saw a post of her in a relationship, a seemingly brand new one. It just emotionally devastated me. Then only a month later, scrolling through again, I see a post of her getting engaged, the actual video of it happening. I was completely crushed again. She must have been dating him for a while and no one in my circle realized. I had already known she wasn't interested in me because of the lack of response or reaching out to me past the short conversations we would sometimes have, but I still had hope in my head. To see her engagement was very hard. It's still fresh and I'm thinking about her a lot. She's amazing and has all the qualities I think I want. From what I've learned about limerence, says Jim, it seems like this is what has been going on with me. This is not the first time I've gotten this way over a woman I was interested in. What I'm wondering is this really limerence or is this normal feelings? Are these normal feelings from meeting someone you're attracted to, someone you're interested in? How do I know the difference? I don't want to shut down my feelings, but I also don't want to have unhealthy obsessions or get too caught up and hurt more. How do I control it? It's so difficult to pull myself out of those low times, the sadness and the depression and the loneliness. I want to feel falling in love with someone. I want to feel all the good feelings that come with that, but I also don't want to keep feeling what I'm feeling right now. I'm also worried that I didn't even know what a good and healthy, loving relationship feels like. I want to love and be loved and haven't had that in my life. I also worry at times that maybe I focus too much on the obsessions and may miss something else good. The situation has really caused me a lot of heartache over the last several months. All right, from Jim. Oh, Jim, that's a hard spot to be in. I think a lot of people here can relate. I know I can. And I'm going to go through your letter now again and highlight what I learned about you and what I can suggest to you based on what you wrote, okay? So you grew up emotionally neglected by both parents. And what you're going through now really matches that, okay? You grew up in a two-parent home, middle class, never lacked for any physical needs. Just goes to show that's not everything. However, your emotional needs were never met or cared for. You said, I have memories that go back to age 3, but I have not a single memory of either of my mother or father telling me they loved me or giving me a hug. All right, that right there, there's a reference for us. That kind of matches what you're describing about your adult relationships. So there we can zero in on what you're missing. What you may be missing is just that baseline foundation of knowing what that feeling is so that you can recognize it and not settle for less. All right, so let's go through. I was also the oldest of 4, was often in a situation where you were babysitting or taking care of younger siblings. Interesting that you did that, and now you work in youth homes. I think your work is noble and real and everything, but it's just interesting, the caretaker of young people. Your dad worked 6 days a week, 10 hours a day, so was absent a lot. And I thought that was interesting because it sounds like you're never home, and we're going to get there. You had to become the emotional parent with your mother and take on the role of regulating her emotions rather than her helping me with mine. So I'm thinking in group homes, that's where that skill is coming in handy. So, interesting resonance between then and now. And not easy, like just knowing how to take care of somebody rather than be loved. I hid my emotions and needs, and my primary goal each day was don't stress out, Mom. So I hid my emotions and needs, and there it is. There it is. Let's just shine a big bright light on that. I hid my emotions and needs because that's what I think is going on right now. You were always on guard. You were hiding emotions, managing things so she would not get upset. And it's only within the past year or so that you've realized a lot of this. Yay! Realizing it is half the battle, and here you are working on it. So good for you. You're 41, you're divorced, single with 2 kids. They're 11 and 9. What a precious age that is. Very formative for them, the relationship that you have with them. And you recognize that in your marriage, which is over, you see that you were not emotionally available. So I'm not sure, you don't really go into that, but you were not emotionally available. So being emotionally available is a super important thing for a relationship. This is your call to action now, that your job now is to start to learn to be emotionally available. And I'll tell you a couple things you can do to get started on that as we go through this, okay? But emotional availability is so important. So it's good you recognize that you hadn't done that. Then you had a 4-year relationship after your divorce, but that didn't work out. You didn't really comment on why, but I'm going to guess that it had to do with you hiding emotions and needs and not being emotionally available. So you have a full-time job running a group home for teenagers and a part-time job as staff at a youth center. Okay, so that's 1.5 jobs. You also volunteer at 2 other youth group programs, and you have 2 kids, 11 and 9, and one of them is always with you, so you're a full-time dad. Okay, so Jim, I'm calling you out. If you're doing a full-time job, a part-time job, and 2 volunteer jobs, when are you with your kids? When are you emotionally available to them? I really seldom really get in people's faces with stuff, but I just want to say, the volunteer jobs, I'm not hearing why they're important. I get that this woman that you were into worked at one, and we'll talk about that. But just for the sake of the kids, I think having been a single parent for 9 years of my mom years, I split from their dad when they were 1 and 4, not by choice, but it was for the best, and then remarried more recently, so there were 9 years I was not married. So I know how hard it is. And I know that a person who's being a single parent needs time when they're with adults, needs time when they're like, enriching their lives. Of course, everybody needs that. And you may need to go on dates and all that. So you need some time that's not in the full-time job. And I'm assuming, you haven't said otherwise, that you're splitting custody with their mom. So there's nights when she has them, but for some reason you have this arrangement where one of them is always with you. So that's interesting. I don't know why that is. Maybe that's necessity. But if they could be together, then you would have nights free for volunteering. But otherwise, kids are always at home without you. So that kind of, to me, I'm like, whoa, what's going on with all that? Where are you? Emotional availability to your kids is the most important kind of emotional availability you can do right now. And I think you'll be surprised how rich your life gets when you have those more connection with your kids, which can only be gained through time with your kids. And that the pressure to find romance, it's real, and I totally hope you find that for yourself. But once you're a parent, that has to go at a certain slower pace, and it needs to be kept farther away from home, because that relationship with the kids is sacrosanct. It has to be protected. So that's what I just want to say, is that quality time with your kids. I hate that word quality time. That's like what busy people do to pretend they're there. Really, really being close to your kids is going to be a powerful antidote to the loneliness you feel. And yeah, it's not the same as a partner, but it's more important than a partner right now. And when you do meet a good person who is partner material, you having a good relationship with your kids is going to be an absolute good thing for all 4 of you, the kids, you, and this new partner. Having a peaceful life, having loving relationships in the right order, that's top line order is kids first. Having that in order is going to first signal to a healthy woman one day that you're a good guy. That's what a good guy does. And I just know, being too busy all the time, it's a strategy to avoid pain and to avoid loneliness. And anything that we do to avoid, it's basically, it's kind of the same thing as doing a drug or something. We don't develop during that time. The time that you're caring for kids or all by yourself is time when you can bring into your awareness those parts of yourself that still need healing, rather than running from it all the time. That's how we can stay stuck in a developmental delay. And I use the word developmental delay for what childhood PTSD can do to us. And healing means the delay ends and we start developing. We move forward in life. So I encourage you to have more time alone and less time working. I'm sure money is an issue. This isn't high-paid work you're talking about, but the volunteering doesn't pay anything. So there you have that. So you say, yeah, your time is pretty filled up and you don't have much room for a relationship on top of everything else. This is true. And you get pretty lonely. It's been 2.5 years, and I know that's hard. And I remember being in the same boat, and it felt so important to meet somebody. Looking back, though, with my retrospecto goggles, that the time with the kids is the most memorable time. The, dates I went on or, worrying about relationships is totally water under the bridge. When I did get enough healing done that a really good relationship could fall into place, first of all, he didn't even meet the kids for a year. They didn't meet him because I didn't want to bring relationship problems or somebody who was going to come and go out of their life into their life one more time. And so that's another thing I would recommend to you, is that when you do date, And we're going to get to this situation at hand, but I just want to say when you do date, take it real slow. Okay. I'm going to talk about reality, the reality of dating as a single parent, because that's what this video is about getting real with yourself and what you really need. All right, so over the summer, your youth center did a week-long summer camp for teens. You do it every year. You love it. It sounds like incredible fun. Some adult leaders from other youth group programs were there to help, and one of them was this beautiful young woman. And you talked to her, you got to know her, you laughed. There was a meaningful connection because you both are on this, common mission to serve teenagers and make life better for them, which is great. And a week like that is a bonding experience. I get it. I get why you would really be able to connect closely with somebody in that situation. So that's all good. And then you say she displays all the qualities that I would look for in a woman, all except one. So it made sense to be attracted. She's 28, you're 41. That's not a deal-breaking age difference. It's definitely notable, and you know that. And you being a single dad, and she's never married. It's, she's at an age where there's a high probability she would want more kids. So there may be, there's a lot of stuff that would be worked out through getting to know you with somebody if you were to date them, but it didn't ever progress to dating. So you thought she would never go for it. It's not what you were looking for was a younger woman, but it just happened, and these things happen, and that's okay, and that's beautiful. Okay. After camp ended, you couldn't stop thinking about her, you desperately missed her, and you wrote to her on social media, okay? And you said, hey, it was just great to meet you, kind of message to get the conversation going. There were a couple messages, and then she stopped responding, and she never even read the final message. And that's kind of cryptic. I'm curious about what that was, but I knew I couldn't bombard her with more messages. Good call. That's true. There was no reciprocation. So you left it at that, but you felt crushed that she stopped responding and that she obviously didn't want to communicate as much. And you wanted to keep the connection going, and it hurt a lot to come to the realization that she didn't feel the same. And if she had, she would have kept talking. Right on. Good. You're reading the signals correctly. You did something right here. You got it resolved fairly quickly. You did it passively, not by actually talking to her about how you felt. But at least it was only a couple of messages. But I think there was a lack of completion here and this devastation that you feel. So you say you continue to think about and obsessing on her. So yeah, obsessing happens when there's no sunshine on it, when you're staying in a non-real fantasy version of the relationship rather than the real one. The real one is painful because she didn't even return your messages. And so this is where we kind of split off, and part of us just continues to have a relationship with the idea of somebody, and that's very comforting to us, and it's this escape. And actually, as a former single parent, I totally understand the desire to escape. I don't think you're a bad person, but I'm just here to kind of help shake you out of this now so that you can get on with having a real relationship, all right? And you keep saying she just seems like the perfect person for you, and you put that in present tense. I'll tell you why she's not the perfect person for you, not even close, is she has a boyfriend, all right? Your perfect person is single, available, and in love with you. That's your perfect person. And anybody who doesn't meet those criteria is a terrible person for you. They're just not good at all right? So first, I'm just going to come in here and say the elephant in the room. She's not the perfect person for you. She's a terrible person for you. It's totally because of something you know about her, right? So then you say, after finding this out, you started volunteering at the same youth group location where she volunteers. That's why I was going on and on about the kids, all right? Second volunteer gig. I just do not feel from what you've told me you have time for this. And she's already she's not interested in you. So this is where I kind of saw the CPTSD behavior of yours. Everything else, I'm like, no, I get it. But where you volunteer with somebody who rejected you is where your CPTSD got control of the steering wheel of your life. All right. And you get to be around her there, and then you get to talk to her, and you're nervous, and sometimes she talks and sometimes not, and good conversation. And then you'd get a high if she did talk to you. All right. So that's you in limerence. That's you doing the drug of limerence, of going and wasting your precious time at another volunteer gig. Like you have full-time job, part-time job, volunteer gig, now another volunteer gig to be around someone who rejected you. I'm just driving it home here. This is not a good idea, and she's not the perfect person. So a really good thing happened, in my opinion, and it's that you were looking at her stuff on social media, and you saw she's in a relationship, and it devastated you, but that was a good thing to happen. Like, it burst your bubble. You having your heart broken by realizing she's in a relationship was you coming to Earth. Earth is a good place to be for you. Okay? Earth is where all real love is and where the women are who might fall in love with you. Fantasy is where nothing is. You can keep like putting your thoughts on it, but it never gives you anything back. All right? So that's why I say, I'm glad you had that painful experience of that. And then further, you saw that she got engaged and you learned this had been going on the whole time. So what you have an opportunity to do here is think back about the interactions you had and how you were thinking, searching for signs that she was maybe into you, which is what limerence is. You just like, maybe here, maybe that cryptic thing she said was really meant to say this. But where she was coming from was she had a boyfriend who was about to propose. She was probably thinking about that, excited about it, in love with him. And you were some guy that she worked with and you were nice enough and she talked to you. And then when she stopped responding to your messages means it started to feel weird. It's not just that she wasn't interested in it, but like she stopped being polite to you. And then she gave you another chance to be polite because what I'm guessing, Jim, is that you put on an act and pretended to be her friend. I'm just your friend. I'm like a guy at work. And this is what we do. This is what we do that makes us end up alone, and I want you to stop doing it. Do not pretend to be someone's friend. If somebody says, like, look, I'm not interested, then back off of them. And if you possibly can, stop having contact with them. And in this case, you can. This is a volunteer gig that you're kind of stalking her a little bit there. So you can back this off and not have contact with her. This is what I want to say to you. You had to hide your needs and feelings so much that some weird kind of shame comes up in you when you have a crush on somebody. And a 41-year-old man having a crush on a woman is not a bad thing. Now, when you're at work, you might have to be subtle and cool about it. But once the work thing is over, the right thing to do if you want a relationship with them is to express it to them. Ask them out on a date. Just say, I don't know, I wasn't sure how you might feel about this. But getting to know you has been really nice, and I wanted to see if you want to get together sometime. That's what you do. That's how you honestly show up with your feelings of being interested to somebody. Now, if you had done this, she would have said, oh, I'm sorry, I don't feel that way at all. I have a boyfriend. It's a serious relationship. And you would have had that disappointing experience like nice and quick. And that's what we're all avoiding, right? When we pretend to be people's friends, when we're madly in love with them. That's what we're trying to avoid, is that inevitable, like it's going to be cut off if we are honest about how we feel. Because usually we know on some level the feeling isn't returned. And it's only through that, putting all that energy into the fantasy that we can kind of keep it going. But even if we have no idea how they feel or we honestly believe they're interested, sunshine is a very good thing. And if someone's interested in you, they will welcome the news that you're interested. And if they're not interested, very important, again, like if you're in a work situation, like at the summer camp, that could be harassment. But once the whole thing is over, you can come out and be honest. And that is you being your full self. You're a grown man and you get to have feelings and you get to ask people out and express yourself. And the growth part for you is to start to have the experience of gracefully handling it when somebody says no. And we all have to learn how to do that. And I bet you've done it in all kinds of situations for work and, things that you've tried to do, wanted to get involved with, and probably dating. The fantasy can only be protected by avoiding that moment where you come out and show people how you really feel. And the fantasy starts to build up, so the stakes become so high against that rejection that's coming that you start to, put this false self out there. And I'm telling you, there is nothing less attractive than somebody going, oh yeah, I'm your buddy. And you feel that vibe from them. Like that's what creepy means, is somebody not being straightforward about how they feel. I guess there's ways of being creepy, creepy people who actually like stalk and pursue. That's creepy. But that dishonesty where you're vibing somebody at being into them and then you're pretending to be their buddy, like it's not trustworthy. And I want you, Jim, to have like a totally like straightforward, open-hearted, honest woman who becomes interested in you at the same time, or you ask her out, or maybe she suggests something, but let's say she hasn't realized she likes you yet, and you ask her, and she goes, oh, I don't know, and then you go, that's cool, well, maybe another time. You gracefully let people have a choice about whether to date you or not, and then we go home and we learn to deal with it. And that's why I spend so much time teaching my daily practice techniques, because those are the techniques that I use every day to deal with all the disappointments, all the embarrassment, all the rejections. You know, there's just little things all day long that trigger us, you know, that trigger hurt feelings or shame or old PTSD stuff. And we need a way to just keep kind of like processing it out, so we can be at peace at the end of the day. It's like, well, I tried. Well, I asked the person. I let them know how I feel. Okay, they weren't interested. Moving on. And that's how you move on. That's how you keep yourself emotionally available, not tied up in a fantasy, not with all your emotions completely unavailable to any real world woman who's looking for a relationship with a guy like you. So that's what it is. It's honesty, transparency, and appropriateness. And that's what I could see in you, that you got trained by your parents' situation to be ashamed of all your feelings and needs, that there's something wrong with it. And you have to pretend to be like Mr. Helpful. I just help people. I'm just so nice. I mentioned this in a video recently, but I read a really good book for men called No More Mr. Nice Guy. And it's a lot about that sort of codependent way of relating to women, of trying to be so nice to get their approval, and how it's not attractive and it never works. And I think you might love it. It's by Robert Glover. I'll put a link down below in the description section for anybody who wants that. I don't know him. I have actually sent an email inviting him, like, come on, Crappy Childhood Fairy. I talk about your book all the time. Maybe someday. If anybody knows him, tell him he should come on Crappy Childhood Fairy. But it's a good book. All right. So then you said, from what you've learned about limerence, it seems like that's what's going on. Yes, I agree. This is not the first time you've gotten this way over a woman, and you were wondering, is it or is it normal? It's like, well, I think we all get a little gaga over people that we are in love with, and we all get a little embarrassed to admit it sometimes. So it's mostly normal. The part where you're holding on to it so long, that's the part that's limerence. And I don't want you to spend another day holding on to a relationship that you already know can't be. That's another day you can't be emotionally available and like out there meeting somebody great, all right? And it's another day that your emotional presence is missing from home with those kids of yours. And oh, you have an opportunity to give them that foundation of a loving and present dad who's really there for them and isn't just kind of spaced out and always kind of thinking of something that's not in the room. Right here in the room, helping with homework, disciplining, loving them, supporting them, showing up at their activities, helping them be on time, helping them discern good behavior, good decisions. This is your top priority, okay? So anything that takes you out of that is automatically like not good for you. What's good for the kids is good for you. All right. And with less volunteering and more focus on the kids and developing your emotional availability to them, I think you're going to have a different result next time you get a crush on somebody. And another opportunity will come. You're at a great age for this. You sound so, self-aware, and you make an effort, and you're a catch, and you can have this. But you got to get these like limerent stuff out of the way. It's just, it's like puncturing your own tires every day. It's not a good thing to do. So you don't want to shut down your feelings, but you got to shut down your feelings for this woman, and you can. So you say, I want to feel falling in love with someone. I want to feel all the good things that come with that. I want you to have that too. And I don't want you to have, just like you said, the part where you just find out like they never were, that they were like with somebody else the whole time. Only a CPTSD kid can go on that long not realizing that they're not getting something back. So that's what you can train yourself to do. I have a dating course. You might want to check it out. I'll put a link to it down below, and also a quiz that shows you common symptoms that childhood trauma might be affecting your dating life. But I teach very directly how you can detect an available versus an unavailable person and start to really identify like what's your pattern. Where is it that you sort of like a switch flips and you can't see it? Where does that happen, and how can you actually keep yourself like really grounded and seeing clearly what's going on? I have distinct exercises for that. So you might want to check that out. I really encourage you, Jim, don't do this alone. It's so important to have people who care about you and know you and you're talking honestly with them. And maybe you have that. You didn't mention this here, but like man friends would be very good for you to have, or maybe a 12-step fellowship of some kind with the men. It's, if you're somebody prone to limerence, it's really easy to kind of bring it with you everywhere you go. So for anybody listening, if you're thinking about going to a 12-step program to deal with limerence, maybe Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous or one of the other programs you qualify for, I would just really exhort you to get some boundaries around any kind of pursuit of romance in those programs. It's not a good place to do it, generally speaking. It can happen, but leave it. Like, just say for at least 1 year, all I'm going to do is get a sponsor and work this program, and I am not going to date here. And I've been around 12-step programs, and I'll just say, just many a person just goes down over that kind of thing. It always feels like if love came along, it would fix us. And it's true that what we need is love, but romantic love is kind of at the top of the pyramid. And we start with the other kinds of treating ourselves with love, treating our kids with love, treating our friends with love, treating the people in our lives who care about us with love, and developing those relationships, and then learning about the wound from our childhood trauma and learning to overcome it. I have this thing, the daily practice. Check that out. I just have all kinds of tools for people. That's what I do, is I help people have a way to calm their symptoms and be able to make good choices for themselves. It's so important. All right. That's how you're going to get love.